Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, believed that the journey to become your true self, which he called individuation, is not only the most important work you can do in your lifetime, but also the most challenging, requiring you to shed the false masks and personas you've worn to gain acceptance from the world, and courageously face the hidden, rejected, and undeveloped aspects of your personality that hold the keys to your authentic power, creativity, and deepest fulfillment. If you want to understand Jung's profound roadmap for discovering who you really are beneath all the layers of conditioning, expectation, and social programming, and learn how to navigate the difficult but ultimately liberating process of becoming genuinely yourself rather than who others want you to be, make sure to subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal about Jung's insights into authentic self-discovery will give you the tools and understanding you need to embark on the most meaningful journey of your life. According to Jung's analytical psychology, the journey to become your true self begins with recognizing that most people live their entire lives trapped in what he called the persona, a carefully constructed mask or false identity that you develop in childhood and early adulthood to gain approval, avoid rejection, and navigate the social world successfully, but which gradually becomes a prison that separates you from your authentic nature and prevents you from accessing the full spectrum of your psychological and creative potential. Jung understood that this persona, while necessary for functioning in society, becomes problematic when you begin to identify with it completely, mistaking this social role for your true identity and losing touch with the vibrant, complex, and often contradictory aspects of your personality that exist beneath the surface of your public face, creating a sense of emptiness, restlessness, and the nagging feeling that you're living someone else's life rather than your own. The first crucial step in Jung's process of individuation involves what he called the confrontation with the shadow, the parts of yourself that you've repressed, denied, or hidden because they don't fit with your idealized self-image, or because society has taught you that these aspects are unacceptable, dangerous, or shameful, even though they often contain tremendous creative energy, authentic passion, and vital aspects of your personality that are essential for becoming whole and complete. Jung observed that most people spend enormous amounts of psychological energy trying to maintain their persona while keeping their shadow hidden, not realizing that this internal split is the source of much of their suffering, anxiety, and sense of being disconnected from their authentic self, because you cannot become truly whole while rejecting and disowning significant parts of who you are, regardless of how uncomfortable or socially unacceptable these aspects might seem. The shadow work that Jung considered essential for authentic self-development requires tremendous courage and honesty, as it involves acknowledging and integrating the parts of yourself that you've spent years trying to hide or eliminate, including your anger, selfishness, sexuality, aggression, laziness, jealousy, and other qualities that may be uncomfortable to admit but are natural and universal aspects of human nature that become toxic only when they remain unconscious and unintegrated. According to Jung's understanding of psychological wholeness, you cannot become your true self by trying to be perfect or by eliminating your negative qualities, but only by accepting and integrating all aspects of your personality, learning to express your shadow qualities in conscious and constructive ways, rather than allowing them to operate unconsciously, where they can sabotage your relationships, goals, and authentic expression of who you really are. Jung believed that the journey to authentic selfhood also requires what he called the integration of the anima and animus, the contrasexual aspects of your personality that represent the feminine qualities within men and the masculine qualities within women, which must be recognized, accepted, and developed in order to achieve psychological balance and access the full range of human capabilities regardless of your biological gender. The anima, according to Jung, represents qualities like intuition, emotion, creativity, receptivity, and connection to the unconscious, while the animus represents logic, assertion, goal-oriented thinking, and the ability to act decisively in the external world. And becoming your true self requires developing both sets of qualities rather than limiting yourself to the narrow range of behaviors that society considers appropriate for your gender. Jung observed that men who remain disconnected from their anima often become overly rational, emotionally shut down, and unable to access their creativity and intuitive wisdom, while women who are cut off from their animus may struggle with self-assertion, clear thinking, and the ability to act decisively in pursuit of their goals, both situations preventing the kind of psychological wholeness that authentic selfhood requires. The process of becoming your true self, according to Jung, also involves what he called the development of a conscious relationship with the self, with a capital S, the archetype of wholeness and the organizing principle of the psyche that transcends the limitations of the ego and connects you to something infinitely larger and more meaningful than your individual personality, providing guidance, wisdom, and a sense of purpose that comes from beyond your rational mind. This self, in Jung's understanding, is not something you create or develop, but rather something you discover and align with, as it represents the totality of who you are at the deepest level, including both conscious and unconscious aspects, and serves as the internal compass that can guide you toward authentic choices and a life that reflects your unique purpose and contribution to the world. Jung emphasized that the journey to become your true self is not a destination you reach, but an ongoing process that continues throughout your entire life, requiring constant attention to the subtle ways you might be slipping back into persona-based living, ongoing shadow work as new aspects of yourself emerge or as life circumstances change, and a willingness to continue growing and evolving rather than settling into any fixed identity or final understanding of who you are. According to Jung's theory of psychological types, part of becoming your true self involves understanding and accepting your natural psychological preferences, whether you tend towards introversion or extroversion, thinking or feeling, sensation or intuition, and learning to honor these tendencies rather than trying to force yourself into patterns that don't fit your essential nature, while also developing your less preferred functions to achieve greater psychological balance and flexibility. Jung observed that many people struggle with authenticity because they've been taught to value certain psychological functions over others, such as thinking over feeling or extroversion over introversion, leading them to suppress or underdevelop aspects of their personality that are actually essential for their wholeness and well-being, creating internal conflict and a sense of being fundamentally misunderstood or out of place in the world. The journey to authentic selfhood, according to Jung, requires what he called the development of the transcendent function, the psychological capacity to hold creative tension between opposing forces within yourself without trying to resolve this tension too quickly, allowing new insights and creative solutions to emerge from the dynamic interaction between different aspects of your personality rather than forcing premature closure or choosing one side over the other. This transcendent function, Jung believed, is what allows you to move beyond the limitations of either-or thinking and embrace the paradoxical nature of human existence, recognizing that you can be both strong and vulnerable, independent and connected, rational and intuitive, serious and playful, without having to choose one quality and reject its opposite, but instead learning to express different aspects of yourself as appropriate to different situations and relationships. Jung understood that becoming your true self often requires what he called a sacrifice of the ego, not in the sense of self-destruction or self-denial, but in the sense of releasing your attachment to a fixed identity and being willing to let go of who you thought you were in order to discover who you actually are, which can feel like a kind of death because it involves the dissolution of familiar patterns and comfortable self-concepts that no longer serve your growth.
This ego sacrifice, according to Jung, is often triggered by what he called the encounter with the numinous, experiences of the sacred, transcendent, or mysteriously meaningful that cannot be explained by rational thought, and force you to recognize that there are dimensions of reality and aspects of yourself that lie beyond the control and understanding of your conscious mind, requiring a fundamental shift in how you relate to yourself and the world. The process of individuation that Jung described involves learning to distinguish between your authentic desires and impulses and those that have been imposed on you by family, society, culture, or unconscious identification with others, a process he called separating from the participation mystique, where you unconsciously merge with external influences and lose touch with your own authentic responses and preferences. Jung observed that many people never become their true selves because they remain trapped in what he called the provisional life, always waiting for the right condition.
The right relationship, the right opportunity, or the right moment to begin living authentically, rather than recognizing that becoming yourself is something that happens through engaged participation in your current circumstances, whatever they might be, and through making authentic choices in the present moment. According to Jung's understanding of psychological development, the journey to become your true self often involves periods of what he called creative illness or psychological crisis, where your old ways of being no longer work, but new patterns haven't yet emerged, creating a liminal space that feels uncomfortable and uncertain, but is actually necessary for genuine transformation and the birth of a more authentic way of living. These crisis periods, Jung believed, served an important psychological function by breaking up rigid patterns and forcing you to question assumptions about yourself and your life that you may have never examined, creating space for new possibilities to emerge and for previously hidden aspects of your personality to come forward and contribute to your evolving sense of who you really are. Jung emphasized that becoming your true self requires tremendous courage because it means being willing to disappoint others, to stand alone when necessary, to make choices based on your inner knowing rather than external approval, and to live according to your own values and vision even when this puts you at odds with family, friends, or society's expectations of who you should be or how you should live. The journey to authenticity, according to Jung, also involves what he called the development of a personal myth, a meaningful story about your life that honors both your individual uniqueness and your connection to universal human themes and archetypal patterns, creating a sense of purpose and direction that comes from within rather than being imposed from outside sources or social conventions. This personal myth, Jung understood, is not something you simply decide upon intellectually, but emerges organically through the process of paying attention to the recurring themes, images, and experiences that seem to carry special significance in your life, often revealed through dreams, creative expression, and moments of profound meaning that point toward your unique role in the larger human story. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of individuation is not self-improvement or personal success in the conventional sense, but what he called the realization of the self, a state of psychological wholeness where all aspects of your personality are integrated and conscious, where you're no longer driven by unconscious compulsions or limited by rigid identifications, and where you can respond to life situations with flexibility, creativity, and authentic presence rather than simply reacting from old patterns. According to Jung's vision of human development, becoming your true self is not a selfish or narcissistic pursuit, but actually represents your greatest contribution to humanity. Because when you become genuinely yourself, you're able to offer your unique gifts and perspective to the world in ways that no one else can, contributing to the collective evolution of human consciousness and helping to heal the splits and projections that create conflict and suffering in relationships and society. The process of individuation, Jung observed, often involves what he called the dark night of the soul, periods of depression, meaninglessness, or existential crisis where everything you once found important or meaningful seems hollow and empty.
But these difficult phases actually serve a crucial function by forcing you to let go of attachments and identifications that are preventing your authentic development and creating space for something new and more genuine to emerge. Jung understood that many people avoid the journey to become their true self because it requires facing uncertainty, loneliness, and the anxiety that comes with taking responsibility for your own life, rather than following prescribed paths or seeking constant approval and validation from others. But he also recognized that this avoidance ultimately leads to greater suffering in the form of regret, resentment, and the deep sadness that comes from never having lived your own life. The practical aspects of Jung's approach to authentic self-development involved what he called active imagination, the practice of consciously dialoguing with your unconscious through creative expression, journaling, dream work, or simply sitting quietly and allowing images, feelings, and insights to emerge without trying to control or direct the process, creating a bridge between your conscious mind and the deeper wisdom of your psyche. Jung also emphasized the importance of what he called amplification, the process of exploring the deeper symbolic and archetypal meanings in your experiences, dreams, and creative expressions, connecting your personal journey to the universal themes and patterns that have guided human development throughout history and across cultures, helping you understand your individual story as part of a larger, meaningful whole. According to Jung's understanding of psychological healing, becoming your true self requires learning to trust your own inner authority and wisdom rather than constantly seeking guidance and validation from external sources, developing the capacity to make decisions based on your authentic values and desires, even when these conflict with what others expect or want from you, and cultivating the courage to live according to your own truth, even when this path seems uncertain or difficult. The journey to authentic selfhood, Jung believed, also involves developing what he called a religious attitude toward life, not necessarily in the traditional sense of organized religion, but in the sense of recognizing that existence contains mystery, meaning, and sacred dimensions that transcend rational understanding and require a sense of humility, wonder, and reverence that keeps you open to experiences and insights that can guide your development in unexpected directions. Jung observed that people who successfully navigate the individuation process learn to see their life as a creative work in progress, where they are simultaneously the artist and the canvas, constantly creating and recreating themselves through conscious choices, authentic relationships, meaningful work, and the ongoing integration of new experiences and insights that contribute to their evolving understanding of who they are and who they're becoming. The ultimate insight Jung offered about becoming your true self is that this journey, while challenging and sometimes lonely, is also the most rewarding and meaningful way to live because it allows you to experience the deep satisfaction that comes from being genuinely yourself, expressing your authentic gifts and talents, creating relationships based on honesty rather than pretense, and contributing to the world in ways that reflect your unique perspective, values, and creative potential rather than simply conforming to external expectations or living according to someone else's vision of who you should be or how you should live.